A single black mother had just lost her job, juggling overdue bills and 2 young children, yet she never let the weight of life dull the kindness in her heart. So when she saw an elderly woman and a little boy, lost and disoriented in the pouring rain, she didn't hesitate to bring them inside. She gently offered them food, shelter, and care. What she didn't know was that this simple act of compassion would change her family's life forever. I love knowing where my viewers are from. Let's get into the story. Angela Carter sat at the edge of her small kitchen table, her fingers moving rhythmically, pulling a crochet hook through a loop of lavender yarn. Her hands worked on instinct now, muscle memory built over months of repetition. The living room light flickered, and she sighed, adjusting the lamp so it would shine better over her craft. The kids were asleep in the next room, curled under mismatched blankets with a tiny electric heater humming near their feet. Angela didn't dare turn it too high. The last gas bill had been almost unbearable. It had been 3 weeks since she lost her job at the textile warehouse just outside Macon. The company had shut down quietly. No meetings, no warnings, just a pink slip in the envelope and an apologetic look from the manager. The owner blamed the new import tariffs. "Costs went up. We couldn't compete with overseas prices," he said, shaking his head. "We're scaling back to survive." Angela remembered standing in line with 20 other workers, all women, most of them single mothers like herself. It wasn't just about the job. Prices were rising everywhere. Milk, bread, gas, even yarn. The same lavender skein she once bought for $2.50 was now nearly $4.00. Lately, everything felt like a luxury. She hadn't even gotten her final paycheck on time. Now, every dollar came from her Etsy shop, Twin Loves, where she sold handmade crochet decorations, miniature pumpkins for fall, stars and angels for Christmas, tiny animals for baby showers. She worked late into the night, not because she loved it, but because it was all she had left. Each time a notification dinged on her phone, her heart jumped. Another sale meant bread and peanut butter, maybe a gallon of milk, maybe even cough syrup if the kids needed it. The house wasn't much. Paint peeled from the walls, the couch sank in the middle. The window near the front door had a draft so cold she stuffed an old scarf into the sill. But it was home. It was hers. She paid every rent check with pride, even if it meant skipping a meal. That afternoon, the rain started early. First a slow drizzle that painted the windows gray. Then heavy sheets of water pounding the rooftop like a drumline. The sky turned the color of old bruises, purple and dull. Angela peeked out the window and sighed. Rain like this meant fewer people walking by, fewer people seeing her little display of yarn crafts in the corner window. She got up anyway, slipped on her worn hoodie, and went to pull in the items she had carefully placed outside on a makeshift wooden rack. Tiny hanging butterflies, flower wreaths, and plush cats with button eyes. As she turned the knob to close the front door, she caught a flash of movement. A blur of yellow and blue hurrying toward the porch through the storm. A child's cry cut through the rain, thin and frightened. Angela stepped back and squinted. A woman, elderly, soaked to the bone, was stumbling toward her gate. One hand clutched a faded umbrella, the other was gripping tightly to the wrist of a little boy no older than 5, his small feet splashing helplessly in puddles. The woman's eyes were wide and unfocused, her hair plastered to her forehead, her lips murmuring words that made no sense. The boy, trembling and soaked through his jacket, looked up at Angela like she was the only safe place in the world. Angela didn't hesitate. "Hey, come in, quick," she called out, waving them toward the door. "You'll catch pneumonia out there." The boy tugged the woman forward, and Angela grabbed a towel from the hook by the door, wrapping it around the child first. He clung to her leg, sobbing softly, while the woman stood silent and blinking at the floor, as if she'd forgotten where she was. "Let me help you," Angela said gently, leading the older woman inside. "It's okay. You're safe now." The moment they stepped into the warmth, the air filled with the scent of wet clothes, cold skin, and something else. Fear. Angela crouched down and looked the boy in the eye. "I'm Angela. What's your name, sweetheart?" He wiped his nose on his sleeve and whispered, Eli, and who is this with you? He hesitated, his voice cracked. My grandma, her name's Kate, but she doesn't remember me right now. Angela felt something heavy settle in her chest. The woman, Kate, was staring at the blank wall, her mouth moving, but no sound coming out. Angela recognized the look. She had once cared for a neighbor with early dementia. The distant gaze, the confusion, the fear that always hid just beneath the surface. Angela nodded slowly. Okay, baby, we're going to get you both warm and dry. I got some soup on the stove. You like chicky noodle? Eli nodded. Angela helped him out of his wet coat, took Kate's trembling hand and led them both to the small sofa in the living room. It creaked under the weight, but it held. As she stirred the pot on the stove, she thought of her own children, asleep just down the hall. She didn't have much, but tonight she had something someone else needed. That was enough. She poured 3 bowls of soup, added crackers on the side, and lit the small candle on the table to make the room feel just a little brighter. Sometimes, when the world offers nothing but storms, all a person can do is open the door. Angela set the bowls down on the chipped coffee table, the candle's small flame dancing in the shadows. Eli had curled himself into the corner of the couch, his knees pulled up to his chest, shivering slightly despite the towel wrapped tightly around him. Angela handed him a bowl, crouching to meet his eye level, her voice gentle but firm. Here you go, sweetheart. Eat slowly. It's hot, okay? Eli gave a small nod, his lips trembling. Thank you, he whispered, his voice thin as tissue paper. Angela reached for the second bowl and turned to Kate. The older woman sat stiffly, hands resting in her lap, staring at the flickering light with an odd stillness. Angela knelt in front of her, holding the soup carefully. Miss Kate, she said, softly at first, then a little louder. I made you something warm. Kate blinked, then turned her head slowly toward Angela. There was a flicker of recognition, or maybe just curiosity, but it faded quickly. I'm sorry, Kate muttered, her words drawn out and distant. I don't know where this isn't the... She trailed off. Her eyes darted from wall to window to Eli, her brow furrowing in confusion. Then she whispered, as if confessing something shameful. That little boy. He keeps following me. Angela's breath caught. Her fingers tightened slightly around the ceramic bowl, but she forced herself to stay calm. She set the bowl down gently on the table. That's Eli, she said softly. He's your grandson. You've been with him all day. Kate shook her head, slowly, her voice rising, brittle and uncertain. No, that can't be right. I was at the store. I was picking up jam. Or something. There was a train. I don't... Her words dissolved into panicked murmurs. Angela reached out and laid her hand lightly on Kate's trembling fingers. It's okay, she said. Her voice was low, steady, the way she used to talk to Jaden when he woke up from nightmares. You're safe here. Just breathe with me, all right? Kate stared at her for a moment, her lips parting slightly as if she might speak again, but instead she closed her eyes and leaned back against the couch cushion, exhausted. Angela stood slowly and looked toward the hallway. Jaden and Lila were still asleep. She moved quietly to the back room, grabbed a dry blanket and one of her old sweaters, and returned to find Eli sitting upright now, watching his grandmother with wide, scared eyes. She's sick, he said suddenly, his voice trembling but more certain now. She was fine this morning. We went to the park. She pushed me on the swing and laughed. Then we walked and she stopped and just froze. Then she didn't know my name. She kept walking away. I didn't know what to do. Angela felt her throat tighten. She set the blanket over Kate and sat beside Eli, pulling him close. You did the right thing, she said softly, stroking his wet curls. You stayed with her? You stayed brave. He nodded, but his eyes filled with tears anyway. Is she gonna die? No, honey. She's just confused right now. Sometimes that happens to people's brains when they get older. But we're taking care of her, okay, together. Angela helped him eat a little more soup, then gave him a towel to dry his hair. She made up a small bed on the floor with pillows and blankets from the hall closet, the same ones she used when the kids got sick and wanted to sleep close to her. Kate seemed to fall asleep sitting up, but then, around midnight, it began. Angela had just started to doze off on the armchair when she heard rustling. She opened her eyes to see Kate standing in the dark, her silhouette swaying near the front door. Angela sat up. "Miss Kate?" Kate didn't answer. She reached for the doorknob. Angela stood quickly, moved across the room. "Kate!" "No, honey, it's night. You need to rest." Kate turned, her eyes vacant, her hand trembling. "He's waiting for me. At the red mailbox." "There's no mailbox here," Angela said gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're at my house. It's raining outside, remember?" Kate blinked rapidly. Then she began to sob, sudden and helpless. "I can't find him. He was just here. My boy, he was just here." Angela caught her before she could slump to the floor. She held her tightly, whispering soft reassurances. "Shh, I've got you. It's okay. I've got you now." The old woman's skin was burning hot. Fever. Angela helped her back to the couch, wrapped her tighter in the blanket, and ran to the kitchen to grab a cool rag. She placed it on Kate's forehead, brushing damp strands of hair from her face. Kate muttered names: Michael, Thomas, Lily, but none of them were Eli. His voice sat on the floor, hugging his knees again, his voice small. "She's never been like this before. Not ever." Angela came back over, crouched down beside him. "It's not your fault, Eli. Her brain's just tired. But she knows you love her, I promise you that." He leaned against her, his breathing unsteady. "You won't let her go, right?" Angela kissed the top of his head. "Not for anything in the world." That night, Angela didn't sleep. She sat between the child and the grandmother, watching over them both as thunder rolled low outside. Every so often Kate stirred, whispered a name, or reached out into the dark. And each time, Angela was there to take her hand. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring. But tonight, just tonight, this house, this worn-out little house, was a shelter not just from the storm outside, but from the one happening inside Kate's mind. The rain had finally stopped. It was just after 6 when Angela felt the change, the silence. No more drumming on the roof, no more wind pressing at the windows. Only the occasional drip from the gutter, and the soft hum of early birds starting their cautious song. Angela sat hunched on the armchair, arms crossed over her chest, neck stiff from keeping vigil all night. A thin beam of gray morning light spilled through the curtain, casting a muted glow across the living room. On the couch, Kate lay still, wrapped tightly in the blankets Angela had readjusted at least 5 times through the night. The fever had broken somewhere around 4 a.m. after a long stretch of muttering and shivering. Now her breathing was slow and steady, her hands no longer clenching at invisible things. Eli was curled up on the floor nest beside her, his small chest rising and falling gently, one arm tucked around the stuffed yarn dog Angela had given him. Angela rubbed her eyes and stretched her back carefully, trying not to wake either of them. She stepped into the kitchen, flicked on the kettle, and stood quietly, watching the water begin to steam. Her body was tired, but her heart was heavy in a different way. There had been something about last night, something fragile and profound. She had watched a child care for his grandmother, and a woman lose herself, then fight to come back. And in between it all, she'd felt something shift inside her. The kettle whistled. Angela poured the water over the last bag of peppermint tea she had, then tiptoed back to the living room. But as she reached the doorway, she stopped. Kate was sitting up. Her back was straight. Her hair still messy but tucked behind her ears now, and her eyes, those same confused, drifting eyes, were different. Clear, alert, focused. Angela stepped in slowly. Kate turned toward her and smiled, faint, soft, but unmistakably real. "Good morning," Kate said quietly. Her voice was husky, worn by the night, but grounded. "I think I owe you a great deal." Angela blinked, holding the cup of tea in both hands. You remember? Kate nodded slowly. She glanced down at Eli, then looked back at Angela. Yes, I remember the rain. And I remember getting lost. I remember this little one running after me. I remember not knowing who he was, but now I know. Her voice cracked. She reached down and touched Eli's hair. The boy stirred, opened his eyes and looked up, sleepy at first, then wide with recognition. "Grandma?" he whispered. Kate smiled wider now, eyes filling with tears. "Yes, sweetheart, Grandma's here." Eli sat up, then launched himself into her lap, wrapping his arms around her waist with such force that Kate nearly fell backward. She laughed, a hoarse, surprised sound, and held him tight, one hand on his back, the other stroking his hair like it was the most precious thing in the world. Angela stepped closer, setting the tea on the side table. Her voice was quiet but firm. "You had a fever. You were very disoriented last night. I was worried." Kate looked up at her, still holding Eli. "I have early-onset Alzheimer's," she said. There was no hesitation now, only resignation. "I was diagnosed last spring. I told myself it was early enough, that I had time, that I'd know when it got serious. Yesterday was supposed to be a simple day at the park, a few hours with Eli. But then, it was like the sky just went dark inside me. I didn't know my name. I didn't know his. I just walked." Angela knelt beside the couch, her eyes soft. "It's okay now. You're safe." Kate shook her head slowly, guilt flooding her features. "I didn't tell my son. I didn't want to burden him. He's busy, always flying between cities. I thought if I pretended to be fine, I could protect him from this. But now I've scared him. I've scared Eli, and I ended up in a stranger's home, putting you through all this." Angela gave a gentle shrug, a half-smile tugging at her lips. "You're not a burden. You're human, and nobody ends up at my door by accident." Kate blinked, then let out a long breath. "Can I borrow your phone? I need to call my son. He needs to know where I am." Angela reached into her hoodie pocket and handed her the old Android phone, the screen cracked on one corner but still working just fine. Kate's hands trembled as she dialed, her thumb pausing a moment before pressing call. The line rang once, then twice. Then a voice answered, sharp, alarmed. "Hello? Mom, where are you?" Kate closed her eyes, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm safe, James. I'm okay. I'm so sorry." Angela stepped back, giving her space. She turned toward the window and opened the curtain fully now, letting the morning light flood in. The sun had broken through the clouds, and the street outside shimmered with leftover puddles. Half an hour later, the sound of tires on wet pavement made Angela glance out the front window again. A black SUV pulled up fast, stopping just outside her gate. Angela stood at the window, one hand clutching the curtain, the other resting lightly against the frame as the SUV rolled to a sudden stop. Its sleek black paint gleamed under the morning sun, still dotted with beads of rain. The driver's door flew open before the engine even turned off. A tall man stepped out, maybe in his late 30s, early 40s. His dress shirt was wrinkled, half untucked, a suit jacket thrown over one arm. His face, sharp features, faint stubble, eyes scanning wildly, was that of someone who'd been up all night. The moment he spotted the house, his stride quickened into a desperate jog. Angela moved to the door and opened it before he could knock. "You must be James," she said calmly. His chest rose and fell with shallow, panicked breaths. "Yes," he gasped. "Yes, I'm James Winslow. Is my mother here? Is Eli?" "They're both safe," Angela said, her voice firm but kind. "Come in." He nearly stumbled over the threshold, eyes darting across the small living room until they landed on the couch. There, Kate, sitting upright, blanket still around her shoulders, and Eli, curled against her side. She looked pale, tired, but her eyes were clear, and she was smiling. "Mom." James exhaled the word like he'd been holding it in for hours. His knees buckled slightly and he dropped to the floor in front of her, taking her hands in his. What happened? Where did you go? I called the police, every hospital in a 10-mile radius. I thought you were... I know, Kate said softly, pressing a hand to his cheek. I know, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. He stared at her, confusion, relief, and frustration all tangled in his expression. I don't understand. Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you tell me you were... Kate's face fell gently. Because I didn't want you to worry. I thought I had time. I thought I could control it. James closed his eyes for a moment, biting back something heavy. Then, slowly, he turned to Angela, who had remained near the doorway, quiet but attentive. You were the one who took them in? He asked, voice low but rich with emotion. You found them? Angela nodded once. They came to my door in the rain last night. Your mom didn't know who she was. Eli was scared, soaking wet. I couldn't just let them stay out there. James stood up, ran a hand through his damp hair, and took a good look at her for the first time. His eyes fell on the modest living room, the patched carpet, the stack of neatly folded yarn projects, the small heater humming beside the hallway, and beyond it, the sound of a child's cough echoing faintly from one of the bedrooms. His voice softened. You have kids? 2, Angela replied. Jaden and Lila. They're still asleep. James glanced back at the couch, then again at Angela. You did all this? For strangers? Angela met his gaze, not flinching. They weren't strangers last night. They were 2 people in trouble. That made them mine to help. There was a long pause. James swallowed, voice thick now. Thank you. I don't even know your name. Angela Carter. He reached out, shaking her hand, firm and full of feeling. Angela, I can't tell you what this means to me. I don't know how to repay you. Angela offered a faint smile, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. You don't have to repay me, just take care of your mom. But James didn't let go of her hand immediately. His eyes were scanning her face, then the worn fabric of her hoodie, then the chipped paint on the walls, then the handmade crafts stacked neatly in baskets. His business mind kicked in. You sell these? He asked, gesturing toward the colorful pile of yarn art by the window. Angela nodded. Online. It's what I do since I lost my job. What kind of job? Textile factory. Closed last month, couldn't keep up with costs, new import tariffs and all. James stiffened. Yeah, my company's been affected by that too. But you've been getting by on this? He stepped closer, picked up a tiny crochet angel, turning it gently in his hand. Barely, Angela admitted. But I'm trying. I've got 2 mouths to feed. I don't have the luxury of giving up. James studied the craftsmanship. Tiny, perfect stitching, a quiet elegance in every loop. His face shifted again. Less business, more awe. Then he looked back at her, almost surprised by his own words. I run a distribution company. Home decor, small crafts, handmade goods. We've been looking for authentic, small-batch suppliers, people with real skill. What you have here? It's beautiful. Angela raised an eyebrow slightly, uncertain. Thank you. James took a breath. I'm serious. I want to help. Not just because you helped my family, though God knows I owe you more than I can say, but because what you're doing matters. I have reach, resources. If you're willing, I'd like to partner with you, get your work into more hands, build something with you. Angela blinked, the weight of his offer settling slowly into her bones. You mean, like, a real contract? I mean a platform. Marketing, sales channels. You wouldn't be doing this alone anymore. Kate, still sitting quietly with Eli now asleep against her side, smiled. Angela looked at her hands, still calloused, still stained with threads of color, and for the first time in months she allowed herself to imagine something more than just surviving. She looked up at James. Her voice, steady but full of something new, said, All right, let's talk. 3 weeks later, Angela Carter stood in the middle of what used to be a dusty, half-vacant corner unit in the back of the East Side Market Co-op. Now it was filled with shelves, baskets, display boards, all built by hand. Her handmade crafts hung like tiny, colorful flags of survival. Crocheted garlands, plush ornaments, doilies with edgework so fine they looked like lace. Above the display hung a simple wooden sign. Burned into it, in smooth letters, it read, "Bread of Grace." She ran her hand along the edge of the counter, still getting used to the smell of fresh wood and new paint. The space had been transformed in days. James had called in help, real contractors, interior designers, even branding people. But he never once tried to take over. Every decision, every color, every name, he left to Angela. "You're the heart of this," he had said one morning, kneeling beside a box of yarn she had brought from home. "I'm just here to make sure it beats loud enough for the world to hear." Angela hadn't known how to answer then, so she just smiled and kept working. Now, as she looked around the store, she heard the soft tapping of little feet behind her. Jaden came bounding in from the side room with a bright smile on his face, a ball of yarn in one hand, a plastic dinosaur in the other. "Mom, Miss Kate made me a snake out of yarn. It has eyes and everything." Angela turned and laughed, crouching to take it from his hand. The little yarn snake was lumpy, its eyes crooked, but it was charming. "She's getting good," Angela said, tousling his hair. "She might give me some competition soon." From the work table in the back, Kate looked up and gave a proud little grin. Her hands still trembled sometimes, and her memory had unpredictable gaps. But she came in every other day, helped with simple patterns, and kept Eli close. She had insisted on it. "I'm no use sitting at home," she had told James firmly. "Let me feel useful, let me be part of what she's building." James hadn't argued. In fact, he'd gone further. With Angela's permission, they had begun something larger, an initiative they called Mothers of the Thread, a cooperative that connected women from low-income neighborhoods, single mothers, senior citizens with time and skill but no outlet, and taught them how to crochet, sew, and sell their work online. The business side? James handled that. Marketing, inventory systems, shipping. But the creative heart that belonged to Angela and the women she now called her sisters. On the first Saturday the shop opened to the public, the air buzzed with warmth. Customers wandered in, some curious, some enthusiastic. There was homemade lemonade on a side table, and Lila passed out cookies in a bright pink dress Angela had made from scrap fabric. Angela stood behind the counter, her palms pressed flat against the wood as the first customer handed her cash for a small rainbow garland. "It's beautiful," the woman said, studying the stitches. "Did you make this?" Angela smiled modestly. "Yes, ma'am. All made right here." "Feels like something real," the customer added, then winked. "Not like that mass-produced junk at the mall." Angela's smile grew. By noon, they'd sold out of 3 baskets. Around 2 o'clock, James arrived. Button-down shirt rolled at the sleeves that were surprisingly stained with paint. He carried a clipboard, but he set it aside when he saw Angela. "How we doing?" he asked. Angela leaned across the counter, still flushed from all the talking. "Better than I dreamed." James nodded, then glanced around the room. "You've started something here, Angela. People feel it." She looked down, a little overwhelmed. "I just wanted to keep my lights on." James tilted his head, his voice low but firm. "And in the process you lit up something bigger." Just then, Kate stood, gently tapping a spoon against a paper cup to get the room's attention. "Excuse me, everyone," she said, her voice still a little raspy, but clear. "Can I say something?" The room quieted. Kate took a moment, looked around, her gaze stopping briefly on Angela, then James, then Eli and the kids sitting on the floor with their yarn animals. "I don't remember every detail of the night that brought me here," she said. "But I remember what it felt like to be cared for without condition. I remember being lost and finding a stranger's door open. That woman," she nodded toward Angela, "gave me more than a place to rest. She gave me a second chance to matter, and now She's giving that to others too. A few in the room clapped, others wiped their eyes. Angela turned red, covering her mouth. Kate wasn't done. "So if you came in here today to buy a decoration," she added, "you're walking out with more than that. You're carrying a piece of survival, a piece of grace. And in this world, we could all use a little more of both." 2 months later, fall settled into the neighborhood with crisp mornings and amber skies. The breeze carried the smell of cinnamon and dry leaves, and the trees stood tall like guardians draped in orange and gold. Change had arrived, not just in the weather, but in Angela Carter's life. Inside the cozy storefront of Thread of Grace, sunlight poured through the front window, warming the wooden floor. Shelves were stocked with handcrafted scarves, blankets, and tiny Thanksgiving turkeys made of yarn. A small heater hummed in the corner, but it was the laughter of women and children that filled the room with real warmth. Angela stood behind the counter, organizing a basket of new orders. Her fingers moved quickly, familiar now with packing tape, thank you cards, and tracking numbers. It was a rhythm of stability, a rhythm of dignity. Just behind her, Kate was helping a teenage girl learn to hold a crochet hook properly. "Not too tight," Kate said, her voice patient but precise. "Let the yarn guide you. You don't force it, you listen to it." Angela glanced over and smiled. The girl, Tanisha, was one of 3 teens from a local shelter who now spent afternoons at the shop. They didn't say much in the beginning, but Angela understood silence. It was often just pain learning to trust. In the back office, James tapped away on his laptop, updating supplier sheets and coordinating shipping dates with the warehouse. He'd taken to wearing jeans and rolled sleeves more often than suits these days. Somehow the change suited him. He looked lighter, rooted. He stepped out now, stretching his arms overhead and walking toward Angela. "Website traffic's up 28% this week," he said, holding his phone out for her to see. "We're getting international orders now, Germany, Australia, even one from Japan." Angela chuckled, her eyes wide with disbelief. "People on the other side of the world buying Lila's sunflower coasters?" "People on the other side of the world buying you, Angela," he said, voice soft but proud. "Your vision, your heart." Angela leaned back on the counter, shaking her head slowly. "I never asked for all this." James stepped beside her. "You didn't have to. You earned it." They stood there a moment, watching the room. Women of all ages sat around tables, chatting, stitching, some teaching, some learning. Leela and Jaden ran by with scraps of yarn tied around their waists like superhero belts. Angela looked at the life around her. Real, textured, imperfect, beautiful. She turned to James. "You know what scares me most?" He raised an eyebrow. "What?" "This could go away, that it's just a dream, and one day I'll wake up back in that little house, broke and trying to keep the lights on with a basket of hope." James looked at her, his expression earnest now, jaw set. "That's not going to happen. You built something that can't be taken away, not because of me, because of who you are." Angela's eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She hadn't cried since that night in the rain. She didn't need to. She'd lived through it. Just then the door opened. A man stepped inside, hesitant at first. Rough hands, a patched-up coat, the scent of engine oil still clinging to him. He carried a bundle of fabric in one arm. Angela stepped forward. "Hey there, can I help you?" He cleared his throat, eyes darting across the room. Someone told me you help folks who know how to sew." Angela smiled. "We do. You sew?" "Yeah. Been doing upholstery for 20 years, laid off last month. I got skills, just no place to put 'em." Angela's smile widened. She reached behind the counter, grabbed a clipboard and handed it to him. "Fill this out. Let's see where we can plug you in." He looked at the form, then at her, surprise creeping into his weathered face. "Just like that?" "Just like that," she said, then added with a knowing smile, "We don't turn people away here." James crossed his arms, watching quietly as Angela welcomed the man to the growing team. Kate glanced over and nodded, her eyes soft. And outside, as the sun lowered in the sky, a small crowd gathered around the storefront, reading a new plaque that had just been installed beside the door. It read, "In memory of that one rainy night, when kindness opened the door." Angela stepped out just as a young reporter snapped a photo of the shop. "Is it true this all started because someone knocked on your door in the middle of a storm?" the reporter asked. Angela looked into the camera, her voice steady, her gaze calm. "No," she said. "It started because I opened it." Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.